When my marriage ended, I realized that my children and I had lost our home. I lost someone I thought was to be my life partner. My children lost their father. We had to give up some of our possessions. I lost finances and some semblance of security. My children would lose time with me as I now had to be a part-time employee while simultaneously being there to support them. But the world has to move on. Our world has to move forward. Just because we experience loss doesn't mean life ends. Are you walking through a storm that feels like it will never end? Do you wonder if life's storms have stolen the beauty from your life for good? You're in the right place. My name is Heather, and like you, I've been through a storm or two and wondered if life would ever be beautiful again. Here we share warriors' words, stories of discovering beauty after battles, and the worth in your wounds. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome, warriors. Before we dive into this week's episode, here is a review from Kristen P. Inspiring show. Love the episode about gratitude. Remembering to be grateful for all that we have is so important for our overall well-being and quality of life. She's raw and real. Thank you, Kristen. Yes, you're right. Gratitude is such an important way to facilitate and maintain our healing and our well-being, like you said. Thank you. Would you like me to read your review on an upcoming episode? Just go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the show. And who knows, I just might read your review next. And after you leave your review, come and join us in the Warrior Words Facebook community at facebook.com/groups/warrior words. Now, a friend of mine recently brought it to my attention that each week I invite you all to join my group, but I don't really say why you should join. And that's a fair point. I designed the Warrior Words community for women who have survived trauma and now want to thrive. As a woman designed in the image and likeness of God, you probably intellectually know that you are beautiful, but you may not see that beauty in yourself anymore. Maybe you don't like the way you look. Maybe you no longer trust people. Maybe the world outside just seems too ugly for beauty to be present. This community is made for women like you, like me, who sometimes struggle with either new traumas or how to find beauty in life situations. Women who want to thrive and see beauty in all God's creations. It's a space for us to come together and encourage one another, support each other in our struggles, and to learn to find beauty, even in the toughest situations. So if anything I've said sounds like you, I invite you to join us. We are stronger together, so let's help each other thrive in beauty. Now grab a tissue and listen in as I recall what it was like to keep some semblance of normalcy in a not so normal situation. Let's rock. This was not a planned episode, but something Jocelyn said in episode 70 struck me and reminded me of a time in my own life. She mentioned how even after her miscarriages, she still had to continue to homeschool her daughters. How many times do we find ourselves in the midst of trauma, struggling to keep our heads above water, and we look around and just see that life just goes on for everybody else. Deneen Miller also mentioned something like this in episode 56. She talked about walking around in the drugstore after her daughter's cancer diagnosis and just watching people go about their day as if nothing was wrong. Well, the truth is, life does go on even when we are struggling. It doesn't seem right or fair as we're going through it. But honestly, the world doesn't stop when we are struggling. And there is beauty in that. Just imagine what would happen if the world stopped every single time one of its 8 billion people experienced trauma. Yeah, likely the world would never ever move forward and we'd all be stuck in a perpetual trauma. For me, it was homeschooling, similar to Jocelyn. Now, I know not everyone can relate to homeschooling, but bear with me because I believe this applies to many other situations as well. When my marriage ended, I realized that my children and I had lost our home. I lost someone I thought was to be my life partner. My children lost their father. We had to give up some of our possessions. I lost finances and some semblance of security. My children would lose time with me as I now had to be a part-time employee while simultaneously being there to support them. But the world has to move on. Our world had to move forward. Just because we experience loss didn't mean life ends. So we grieved. I don't mean to say that there isn't a time for grieving and mourning. There is. And that time is important to the healing process. But after that, you have to find a way to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So for me, after considering our options and the help that was available to us, I decided to keep the only thing constant that I could for my children. Knowing it would be difficult, I decided to continue to homeschool my children as a single parent. Now, I'm sure there's someone out there saying there's no way that they could do it even as a married parent, much less as a single parent. And I get that. Homeschooling is not easy, especially when you don't have that support or income of another parent. But it was important to me to keep something the same for my children in a world where everything else was changing. And I was not without help. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to my mother, who helped in countless ways. My sister helped with babysitting. My brother helped by selling some of our things so that we would have a bit of money. I did eventually find part-time work and an actual job. Now, this cut into the time a bit, but it did free up some resources for us. There is such beauty in family members coming together to help one another. Now, another place I found beauty was in the fact that I had to get creative. Due to our limited resources, I couldn't buy the latest, greatest, fancy curriculum that was available. We got scrappy, and my children still learned. They not only learned, but they were successful and well-rounded. In fact, when it came time for them to apply to colleges, they were each accepted at multiple colleges and universities around the country. Now, I don't say that to brag on myself. I say that to show that my dedication to them, my obedience to God, my family's help, and our ability to think outside the box, they all work together to create an environment which allowed my children to thrive, even though we were walking through a storm that, in one way or another, lasted for years. Now, I want to offer a couple of my scrappy tips to any homeschooling mamas who may be listening. Make use of your public library. We found so many programs and activities that directly correlated to their studies, and most of them were free. Make use of historical sites in your area and museums. Again, so many free and relevant programs. Use eBay and Facebook groups to find curriculum. You don't need new and fancy. I would buy my stuff used and then resell it in order to buy more used things for the following year. Use Pinterest and YouTube. There are a multitude of free activities and lessons available online. You can do this. But back to the point of this episode. The world doesn't stop because one person is suffering through trauma. It can't. So allow yourself some time to grieve and start to heal. But don't stay there. Get back up. Put your feet on the ground and start moving them one at a time. If you have kids and are walking through a storm, one thing you can do for them, and honestly for yourself too, is to try to keep at least one thing the same. Keep some consistency if at all possible. Trust me, this will help your healing too, and you will be an example for your children. Now, one other thing before I go, totally different, random. This podcast has been on the air for a little over a year at the time of this recording, and we've now been heard in 47 states and multiple countries. In fact, I noticed we have a growing listenership in Canada and India. And my newest listener, as of this recording, is from the island of Cyprus. That just amazes me. I see you from Australia, Ukraine, Ireland, France, Germany, the UK, Russia, Brazil, Japan, China, Mexico, Nigeria, Switzerland, Italy, the Netherlands, United Arab Emirates, Bangladesh, Argentina, Colombia, the Faroe Islands. Oh, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. Maybe it's Faroe, I don't know. Honduras, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Qatar, Romania, Saudi Arabia, and South Africa. I am in awe. Thank you. And a side note, if you know anyone in the United States from Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Vermont, would you mind sharing this podcast with them? Let's get all 50 states represented and continue to build up that list of international listeners. Wherever you are, I appreciate every download, every listen, every review, and every time you share an episode or the podcast. God bless you all. So until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.